He didn't wear a badge. He didn't raise his voice. But when a group of privileged boys mocked a disabled child in a school hallway, a quiet single dad, once a Marine, stepped forward. What happened next was caught on camera, and by the next morning, the billionaire mother of that child made a decision no one saw coming. This isn't just a story about bullying. It's about courage, class, and the kind of strength that doesn't shout, but stands still. The echo of sneakers squeaking on polished marble filled the hallway. Lockers gleamed under the fluorescent lights of Whitestone Academy, the kind of school where trust funds outnumbered textbooks and last names carried weight like currency. But in the midst of that pristine prestige, a storm was quietly brewing. Leo Whitmore, 9 years old, sat rigid in his customized wheelchair at the far end of the hall, clutching a well-worn book against his chest. His legs, thin and trembling, were strapped in for support. His brown curls had fallen slightly into his eyes, but he didn't dare raise a hand to fix them, not with 4 towering silhouettes blocking his path. The Red Jackets, that's what students called them, 4 8th-grade boys, all on the baseball team, all sons of donors. Their crimson varsity jackets were like a badge of untouchable arrogance, and today, their attention had turned to Leo. "Hey," Wheels once sneered, stepping in front of the wheelchair. "What's the rush? Late for a hugging session with mommy's money?" The others laughed high and cruel. One reached out and snatched the foam cushion from Leo's lap. Another pushed the footrests slightly, causing Leo to jerk forward awkwardly. "Stop it," Leo said, voice barely above a whisper. "Oh, he speaks," one taunted, filming it all with his phone. "Come on, Whitmore, give us a little speech for TikTok. Inspirational stuff, you know?" Leo's hands trembled as he tried to grab back his cushion. Instead, one of them casually tossed it down the hallway like a frisbee. And then a shadow fell across the polished floor. Not a teacher. Not security. A man. He walked with a quiet purpose, boots soft but firm against the tile. Worn jeans. A faded olive jacket with the U.S. Marine Corps emblem barely visible on the left sleeve. His face, rugged and sharp, bore the kind of calm that only came from having faced much worse than middle school bullies. One arm held a small toolbox, the other slowly set it down by his side. Jack Turner. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't run. He simply walked forward until he stood between the bullies and the boy. The Red Jackets laughed, almost relieved to see an adult. "Who are you?" one asked, unimpressed. The janitor. Jack looked at him, not with anger, but with a stillness that made the boy take half a step back. "I'm the man who's going to make sure this young man gets to class safely," Jack said. Voice low, calm, steady. One of the boys stepped forward, puffing his chest. "You gonna hit a kid, old man?" Jack's eyes didn't flinch. "I don't need to." The boy lunged. In one fluid motion, Jack sidestepped, caught the kid's arm, midair turned it gently, and let him stumble to the floor with his own momentum. No harm. No force. Just precision. The hallway fell into stunned silence. Jack bent down and picked up Leo's cushion. He gently placed it on the boy's lap. "You okay, son?" Leo nodded, wide-eyed. "Good," Jack said. Then he turned toward the others. "It takes more strength to protect someone than to pick on them. You boys might want to learn that before the world teaches it the hard way." Phones were still recording. Students leaned out of classrooms. Whispers spread like fire. And at that moment, running down the hallway, her heels clicking fast, came Clara Whitmore. Her white suit was slightly wrinkled from her rush. Her handbag hung loosely from her arm. Her eyes searched wildly until they locked onto Leo, then on the man beside him. "Leo," she cried, kneeling at his side. "Mom," Leo said, his voice shaking. "He helped me." Jack nodded politely and took a step back, giving her space. Clara looked up. Their eyes met for the first time. She had the unmistakable aura of someone used to commanding rooms, not halls. Her beauty was elegant and mature, her hair tied in a loose bun, her posture regal even while crouching beside her son. But her eyes, the way they looked at Jack, were filled with something else, something quieter, a mix of gratitude, curiosity, and something she hadn't felt in a long time. Safety. "You protected my son?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Jack glanced at Leo. He didn't need much protecting, just someone to stand with him. For a moment, Clara forgot the crowd, the cameras, the headlines already forming in someone's social media feed. She looked at the man before her, dust on his boots, a marine tattoo barely visible on his wrist, a calmness carved by war and fatherhood. "Can I have your name?" she asked. "Jack Turner," he replied. "I'm just the repair guy." Clara blinked. The word just didn't sit right. No, she thought. There's nothing just about him. As the principal arrived with 2 security officers, chaos rippling behind them, Clara stood and reached for her phone not to make a call, but to cancel the one she was about to make to her lawyers. Because in that moment, she already knew. This wasn't the end of a confrontation. It was the beginning of something else. Something neither of them saw coming. Jack Turner wasn't a man who enjoyed attention. Not in war, not in peace. Especially not when half a dozen smartphones were pointed his way. He preferred the quiet, the whirring of a power drill, the rhythm of his daughter's breathing as she fell asleep in the next room, the stillness of a sunrise after a long night of worry. But now, walking down the corridor of Whitestone Academy, escorted by the school's security team and the principal's rigid posture, he could feel the weight of every eye. Clara Whitmore followed behind him, her expression unreadable, professional, composed, but with a flicker of something else underneath. Concern, respect, or maybe something deeper. They turned into a private office. Once the door clicked shut, the silence wrapped around them. Jack didn't sit. Principal Harland, a thin man with silver-rimmed glasses and the political instinct of a career diplomat, cleared his throat. "Mr. Turner, while we appreciate your intervention earlier, I must formally ask for a statement regarding what happened. It's protocol." Jack folded his arms calmly. Of course. Before the principal could open a folder, Clara stepped forward. "I'd like to clarify that Mr. Turner acted with complete restraint. If anything, the school should be thanking him." Harland blinked. "Ms. Whitmore, I understand your personal stake in this, but we must also consider the optics." "I am considering the optics," she interrupted, her voice calm but sharp. "And you should consider the lawsuits we'd be facing if this had turned out differently." Jack shifted, slightly uncomfortable. He didn't like people going to bat for him, especially powerful ones. Especially ones who smelled faintly of jasmine and strength. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said simply. "Just wanted to make sure the kid got through the hall without getting humiliated." Harland sighed. "We'll file the report and conduct a review. In the meantime, Mr. Turner, I suggest you keep a lower profile on campus." Jack nodded. That was the plan, believe me. Clara turned to him as the meeting concluded. "Jack, would you walk with me?" Jack hesitated for the briefest moment, then nodded. They exited through a side corridor away from the crowd. The clamor of students and whispers behind lockers felt miles away. For a few minutes, they walked in silence. "I watched the whole thing," she said softly, her heels tapping beside his worn boots, from the end of the hallway. "The moment I saw you step in front of Leo." She trailed off. Words didn't come easily to her when it came to gratitude. She was used to contracts, mergers, and negotiations, not moments like this. Jack looked straight ahead. "He reminded me of my daughter Emma when she first started school. She was small for her age. Kids notice that." "I'm sorry to hear that," She grew stronger. They both will. Clara studied him. His words were simple, but they carried the weight of lived experience. There was something in the way he spoke, measured direct, but never hard. "Can I ask what branch?" she said. "Marines. 8 years. 2 tours." And now Jack smiled faintly. "Now I fix leaky pipes and busted AC units. Occasionally stop hallway crimes, apparently." Clara let out a soft laugh, a real one, the kind she hadn't heard from herself in months. It surprised her. "I'm serious about wanting to thank you properly," she said. Would you and Emma like to have lunch with me and Leo? It doesn't have to be formal. Just a small thank you." Jack glanced at her, and for the first time really looked into her eyes. Behind the composed elegance, there was a tiredness there. Not from lack of sleep, but from holding the world up on her shoulders too long. "I appreciate that," he said, after a pause. "Emma's favorite place is a diner near Main and 7th. Best grilled cheese in the county." Clara smiled, surprised again, not at his suggestion, but at how much she wanted to say yes. "Then it's a date," she said instantly, regretting her choice of words. Jack raised an eyebrow. "A lunch," she corrected quickly. "Just lunch." He gave a slow nod, his voice steady. Just lunch. That night, Jack returned home to the modest rental where he and Emma lived. The screen door creaked slightly as he pushed it open. Tools were scattered across the workbench on the porch. Inside, the smell of cinnamon and toast lingered from breakfast. Emma, 7, and Fearless sat cross-legged on the floor, coloring a map of the solar system. "Hey, Bug," Jack called gently. "How was school? Boring? Except we learned Jupiter has 79 moons. That's so unfair." Jack chuckled and crouched beside her. "Maybe next time we'll go visit." Emma looked up at him with those same deep-set eyes that reminded him of her mother, gentle, curious, and impossibly wide. "You look tired," she said. Jack smiled. "Met a boy who needed a hand today. Reminded me of you. Did you help him?" "I think I did." She nodded solemnly. "Good. You always say helping someone is how we stay strong." He kissed the top of her head. "That's right." Later that night, Jack sat on the back steps nursing a cup of lukewarm coffee and watching the sky turn indigo. The stars blinked faintly above the treetops. Crickets sang their evening chorus. And he thought of Clara. Not because she was beautiful, though she was. Not because she was powerful, though she clearly was. But because of the way her voice cracked slightly when she saw her son in danger. The way she stood still, yet firm in front of the principal. The way she said thank you without needing to say it. He didn't know what tomorrow's lunch would hold, but something told him this wasn't going to be just lunch. Not for long. The Saturday sun stretched lazy fingers through the glass panes of Hazelwood Diner, a beloved local spot, tucked just off Main and 7th. Faded red booths, checkered floors, and the soft clink of silverware gave the place a comforting hum, the kind of place where people didn't come to be seen, just to be fed, and maybe for a few minutes to forget the weight of the world. Jack Turner was already seated in a corner booth, Emma by his side swinging her feet over the linoleum. She wore her favorite yellow dress and held a worn paperback book in one hand, a story about a brave rabbit and his magical garden. Jack had made sure her hair was combed and her sneakers clean. She'd insisted on wearing her sparkly clip-on earrings for the occasion. "Are we meeting someone fancy?" she asked, eyeing the empty booth across from them. "Kind of," Jack replied with a smile. "But you don't have to be fancy to be kind." Emma nodded like a philosopher. "But it helps if you smell like vanilla." Jack blinked. That's what Leo's mom smells like." Jack laughed softly. His daughter missed nothing. A moment later, the diner bell jingled. Clara Whitmore entered in a soft beige sweater, dark jeans and sunglasses that she quickly removed. There was no entourage, no personal assistant, no designer heels clicking across the floor. Just a woman, a mother walking toward the man who had protected her son. Beside her rolled Leo in his sleek motorized wheelchair. He wore a blue hoodie, his brown curls slightly neater than usual, his eyes both nervous and excited. Clara spotted them, smiled, and gave a small wave. Jack stood offering a nod as he helped her with Leo's placement at the booth. "Hi, I'm Emma," the little girl chirped. "Do you like grilled cheese too?" Leo's face lit up. "It's my favorite." "Well then," Emma said, "with the authority of a tiny queen, you can sit next to me." They slid in together, while Clara and Jack took the other side. A waitress came by, took their orders, grilled cheese tomato soup, and 2 chocolate shakes for the kids, black coffee for Jack, herbal tea and avocado toast for Clara, and left them to the awkward pause that often followed strangers turned acquaintances. Clara broke the silence first. "Thank you again. I know I've said it already, but I don't think I've said it enough." Jack shrugged. "You don't have to." "I want to," she said. "Most people wouldn't have stepped in, not at a school like that, not with those boys." Jack's gaze dropped briefly to his coffee. "Most people haven't been trained to recognize danger in polished places." She tilted her head, intrigued. "Marine mindset," he gave a dry smile. "And single father instinct. Been raising Emma alone since she was 2. "I'm sorry," Clara said gently. "That can't have been easy." Jack met her eyes. It wasn't. But it was grounding. Clara nodded slowly. "I lost Leo's father 4 years ago. He was a tech investor. Plane crash. It changed everything overnight." "I'm sorry," Jack echoed, and this time the silence was not awkward. It was shared. The kids, meanwhile, were deep in a conversation about constellations and which planets could grow pizza trees. Clara watched them, a small, genuine smile playing on her lips. Then she turned back to Jack. "Leo's never had many friends. Other kids don't always know how to talk to him. But your daughter, she treats him like anyone else." "She was raised that way," Jack said. "Everyone deserves dignity, especially when the world forgets to offer it." Clara's gaze lingered on him a moment longer. There was something about him, something rooted, unshakable. He didn't fill silences with noise. He let them breathe, and yet she could sense the storms he'd weathered. The food arrived. As they ate, the conversation deepened. Clara asked about Jack's time in the Marines. He told her carefully about long deployments, desert winds, and the silence that came after explosions. About friends he lost and letters that never made it home. She shared her own wars, boardroom battles, nights alone in a house too large, the gnawing guilt of missing Leo's therapy milestones because of an investor call in London. They were 2 people from different worlds, bound by grief, love, and the struggle to build something strong from brokenness. "You know," Clara said quietly, "for years I thought money would solve everything. Buy the best therapists, the best doctors, the best schools." "Did it?" Jack asked. Clara shook her head. It helped. But it didn't fix the loneliness, or the fear, or the moments I wondered if I was failing him. Jack looked at her, then not as the billionaire on magazine covers, but as a woman, tired, resilient, doing her best. "You're not failing," he said. "You're fighting. There's a difference." Clara exhaled slowly. That might be the kindest thing anyone said to me in a long time. Across the booth, Emma reached over and grabbed Leo's hand without warning. "Do you want to come to our house sometime? My dad makes the best chili in the world." Leo looked stunned. Then he smiled, a real one. "Okay." Clara watched the exchange and felt something tighten in her chest. Hope. Something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. As they walked out of the diner, the late afternoon sun warm on their faces, Clara turned to Jack. "This lunch, It meant more than you know. Jack nodded once. To me, too. Their eyes held for a second longer than necessary. Then she took Leo's hand and helped him into the back of her car, while Emma climbed into Jack's old Ford with a book in her lap and a grin on her face. Neither parent said it, but both felt it. This wasn't the end. It was a door quietly opening, and neither of them wanted to close it. Clara Whitmore sat in her corner office 31 floors above Manhattan, but her mind was still stuck at a modest diner with red booths and checkered floors. Her hands hovered over a sleek glass keyboard, but her screen had dimmed from inactivity. Emails waited. Contracts pinged. A board meeting countdown blinked in the bottom corner of her screen, and still her thoughts drifted. She could see Jack Turner's quiet eyes, steady, unwavering as he spoke about raising his daughter alone. The way his voice dropped slightly when he mentioned his wife. The way he looked at Emma, as if she were the only star left in his sky. And Leo, laughing, holding hands with another child. That laughter echoed louder than any investor's voice. Clara leaned back in her chair, unfastened her collar slightly, and stared out at the skyline. It was the first time in weeks she had allowed herself to just pause. And in that pause, something crept in. Guilt. Not the kind that came from missing a recital or forgetting a birthday those she'd learned to mask with luxury and lavish apologies. No, this was older, deeper. The guilt of a woman who had everything yet never felt like enough. Meanwhile, across town, in a garage that smelled of engine oil and sawdust, Jack knelt beside an old Harley-Davidson wrench, in hand, sweat dotting his brow. Emma sat nearby, legs folded beneath her sketching, something in a little spiral notebook. "You're drawing again," Jack said between bolts. "It's Leo and me. We're on Mars. We're best friends now." Jack smiled, wiping his hands on a rag. He's a good kid. Emma looked up, her eyes serious. He's brave. Jack paused. That word again. Brave. People used it on him all the time. But bravery wasn't just about facing enemy fire or protecting others. Sometimes bravery was waking up to another day of missing someone. Sometimes it was learning to smile again, even if your legs didn't work. Sometimes it was showing up to life when you didn't feel seen. He thought of Clara again. She had that same quiet weight behind her eyes the kind soldiers carried after too many battles. And Jack knew the look because he wore it too. That night, Clara stood in the hallway outside Leo's room, watching through a small crack in the door. He sat in bed with his tablet, scrolling through photos from the diner. He had taken a blurry picture of Emma holding up a grilled cheese like it was a trophy. Another of Jack smiling at something off camera. Clara stepped in quietly. "You okay, sweetheart?" Leo nodded. "Today was a good day." "I thought so too." Leo hesitated. "Mom." "Yes, baby. Why don't we have more good days?" Clara swallowed. It was such a simple question, and yet it broke her. She walked to the bed and sat beside him. Because sometimes, grown-ups forget what makes a good day. Leo leaned into her shoulder. "I like today because nobody treated me like I was broken." Clara kissed the top of his head. "You're not broken, Leo. You're extraordinary." He didn't answer, but the silence between them said he wanted to believe her. The next morning, Clara canceled her first 3 meetings. She drove Leo to school herself, something her assistant had usually handled, and walked him all the way to his classroom. At the door, she knelt beside him. "You remember what we talked about?" she asked. He nodded, shoulders back, head high. "I'm not invisible." She smiled. "Exactly." She kissed his cheek, straightened his collar, and stood. As she turned to leave, a hand tapped her shoulder. One of the mothers, a PTA board member, gave her a strained smile. "Clara." "So good to see you. I didn't realize you still did drop-offs." Clara smiled without warmth. Sometimes you have to remind yourself what actually matters. The woman laughed awkwardly. Well, you're certainly stirring up buzz. That whole video of your son and the veteran, it's gone viral. Even my husband saw it on LinkedIn. Clara's stomach tightened. Must be hard, the woman continued, navigating that kind of publicity. Some of us were worried it might reflect poorly on your company. Clara's smile thinned. If protecting a child from bullies reflects poorly on anyone, maybe they're in the wrong business. With that, she turned and walked toward the parking lot heels, clicking spine, straight eyes fierce. But the moment she closed her car door, her shoulders slumped, because she knew the board was going to call, and they wouldn't be smiling. Later that evening, Jack stood at the sink washing dishes, while Emma brushed her teeth in the bathroom. The house was quiet, except for the soft hum of the ceiling fan and the occasional clink of plates. His phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. He dried his hands and answered. "Hello." Jack came, Clara's voice soft, uncertain. "Yeah, everything okay?" A long pause. I don't know why I'm calling. I guess I just needed to hear a steady voice." Jack leaned on the counter. "Rough day, rough year," she replied with a short laugh. "But yes, today was heavier than usual." "I get that. I keep thinking about what you said, that helping someone doesn't make you a hero. But I think it does, especially when you do it without thinking about what you'll lose." Jack didn't speak. He knew when someone just needed space to spill. "I'm sorry if this is weird," Clara continued. "I don't usually call people. I don't really let people in." "I don't either," Jack said simply. Another pause. "I'm glad Leo met Emma," she said. "And I'm glad I met you." His voice was quiet. "Me too." And for a few minutes they just sat there on opposite ends of the city, each in their own silence, each holding the line for the other. And something passed between them. Not words, but understanding. The kind that doesn't need to be explained. By Monday morning, the video had racked up over 2.3 million views. Clips of Jack Turner calmly shielding Leo from the red jacket bullies were edited, captioned, reposted, and turned into short-form motivational reels across social media. Hashtags like Stand Strong, Vet Hero, and Dikoant, Protect Kids, trended on Twitter, Instagram, and even Reddit. It wasn't just Jack's actions that caught attention, it was the way he did it. No violence, no shouting, just the quiet, unshakable presence of a man who stood his ground, without needing to prove anything. And the internet ate it up. But not everyone applauded. Clara Whitmore sat at the head of a sleek black conference table on the 42nd floor of Whitmore Innovations. The room was all glass and chrome, full of sharp suits and sharper opinions. "Clara, with all due respect, this could compromise your position," said Richard Halloway, one of the board's oldest and most conservative members. "The optics, I know the optics," Richard. Clara interrupted, her tone measured. "What I'm asking is, where exactly is the liability in someone protecting my son from being humiliated?" "It's not about that," another board member said, a younger woman with cautious eyes. "It's about the narrative. Right now, your family is part of a story, a viral one, and investors hate unpredictability." "Unpredictability," Clara repeated. "My son being harassed in a hallway is unpredictable. A good man stepping in to help is the only decent part of the story." There was a long silence, and then the most dreaded phrase in corporate culture dropped like a stone. "We're just asking you to consider damage control." Clara sat back in her chair, lips tight. Damage control. As if Jack Turner was a press release gone wrong. She looked out the window beyond the skyline toward where her son was sitting in school, head up, shoulders back. For the first time in years, Leo had wanted to go to class. She tapped the table once, deliberately. The only thing I'll be controlling is how quickly we shift our culture to one that actually supports decency. If that's a problem, you know where the door is." Murmurs buzzed, but no one stood. Because no one ever stood against Clara Whitmore, not without consequence. Across town in the quiet of his garage-turned-workshop, Jack Turner sat on an old milk crate beside a rusted-out Triumph he was trying to bring back to life. But his phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages, notifications, interview requests, reporters camping outside the elementary school. A producer from a major morning show had somehow gotten his number and left a voicemail asking for a quick chat about your heroic moment. Jack didn't like it. Not one bit. He hadn't saved Leo for applause. He hadn't intervened to become a symbol. And now people wanted to turn him into a story. His story. The one he'd worked so hard to live quietly. Emma walked into the garage, backpack still slung over one shoulder. "Dad, you're on TikTok again. I didn't even know I had a TikTok." She grinned. "Well, apparently you've got more followers than the mayor." Jack sighed. "That's not a good thing." Emma sat beside him and leaned her head against his shoulder. "You were just being kind." "Yeah, but kindness doesn't usually come with camera crews." "Maybe it should," she said. "Maybe people would remember to do it more." Jack smiled faintly. Leave it to Emma to make things simple again. Still, when his phone buzzed again this time, a number from a local precinct, his stomach tightened. He answered. "Turner." "Mr. Turner, this is Officer Diaz from the Midtown Division. We've had a few complaints filed regarding the incident at Whitestone Academy." "Complaints?" "Yes, sir, from the parents of the students involved. Allegations of unnecessary force and physical contact." Jack closed his eyes, jaw tight. "They attacked a disabled boy." "I know, sir. I've seen the footage. But politics being what they are, we're going to need you to come in and make an official statement." Jack said nothing for a long moment. "Then I'll be there this afternoon." Clara was in the middle of a product design review when her phone buzzed. A text from Jack. "They've asked me to come in. Some parents are filing complaints. I'll keep you posted." She excused herself from the meeting without a word and slipped into her private office. Her heart hammered in her chest, not out of fear, but fury. Fury at the parents who raised those bullies. Fury at the school board for entertaining their complaints. Fury at a world where the man who stood up for a disabled child was being punished for it. She typed back, "I'm coming with you." His reply came 5 seconds later. "You don't need to." Hers came 3 seconds after that. "I want to." At the precinct, Jack sat calmly across from Officer Diaz, giving his statement with the clarity and control of someone who had once briefed generals in a war zone. No exaggeration, no emotion, just facts. He described the moment he saw the boys closing in on Leo. The shove, the mocking, the panic in the child's eyes. His own reaction nonviolent, measured, and meant only to create space. Diaz finished taking notes and looked up. "Honestly, sir, I don't think anything will come of it. The footage speaks for itself. But with who those boys' parents are." Jack nodded. "I get it." Just then the door opened. Clara Whitmore stepped in, every inch the powerful executive in heels and confidence. "I'm here to file a countersuit," she said, "for harassment and public defamation of character against the parents filing false reports." Officer Diaz blinked. "Ma'am, my legal team is already drafting statements, but I thought it might be more impactful if I delivered the first one in person." She turned to Jack, eyes softening slightly. "No one's dragging your name through the mud, Jack. Not if I can help it." Jack looked at her for a long moment, and something inside him shifted. He'd spent so long believing no one would ever stand for him. But here she was, standing. The sound of gravel crunching under tires was the only warning Jack had. It was late afternoon, golden hour in the sleepy neighborhood near the river. His garage door was rolled halfway up, letting in the breeze and the scent of pine from the woods out back. A Johnny Cash record spun softly on a dusty old turntable in the corner, and the rhythmic clinking of metal filled the silence as Jack reassembled the rear drum brake on an old Jeep Cherokee. Then the crunch of slow tires. He wiped his hands on a rag and stepped out. The matte black Tesla Model X didn't belong in this neighborhood. It gleamed like a spacecraft among rusted mailboxes and dented pickup trucks. But Clara Whitmore stepped out as if she'd been here 100 times. No heels today. Just jeans, a light trench coat, and white sneakers. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. But even dressed down, she moved with the poise of someone born to command attention. Jack raised an eyebrow. Didn't think you'd actually come. Clara offered a faint smile. I needed to see where the noise stops. Jack gestured toward the garage. Come on in. Mind the oil stains, they're older than both of us. She stepped in carefully, eyes scanning the space. Tools lined the pegboard in neat rows. An American flag hung above the workbench. A photo of a much younger Jack in uniform standing beside another Marine with arms slung over shoulders was tucked into the corner of a dusty mirror. Next to it, a child's hand-drawn picture, Emma her dad, and a dog they never owned, but she still wished for. I expected chaos, Clara said softly. But it's peaceful. It has to be, Jack replied. The world's loud enough. She nodded, running her hand gently over a wooden shelf holding mason jars filled with screws. You built this place yourself every inch, he said. Started with a hammer and a couple of planks. The neighbors pitched in. We trade favors. I fix their trucks. They bring over casseroles. We survive. Clara gave him a sideways glance. It's like another planet compared to my world. Jack smiled faintly. Money builds skyscrapers, but community builds walls that don't fall. She looked at him thoughtfully. I grew up believing the opposite. He met her eyes. You still believe it? She paused. No, she said. Not anymore. They sat on a makeshift bench just outside the garage, sipping lemonade Emma had insisted on preparing with the seriousness of a Michelin chef. Inside, the girl now sat with Leo, showing him how to fix a broken toy drone they dug out from a cardboard box. Clara watched them through the open garage door. He's laughing, she said softly. I haven't seen him laugh like that in months. Emma's good at making people forget what hurts. Jack said. So are you, Clara said. Not looking at him. He didn't answer, but his silence said enough. For a few minutes they just sat, watching the kids watching the sunset, watching their own carefully guarded lives make room for something unfamiliar. Then Clara broke the quiet. Jack, can I ask you something? He nodded. When you left the military, what did you lose first? Jack looked down at his hands. Grease in the creases, scars under the surface, order, he said. Then identity, then sleep. She turned to him, and what brought it back? He looked toward the garage where Emma had just burst into giggles as Leo launched the now working drone into a barrel of rags. That one, he said quietly. She was barely 2. Woke me up crying in the middle of a storm. I held her in my arms, still in my uniform, and realized I couldn't afford to stay broken. Clara blinked. That's powerful. Jack shook his head. It wasn't powerful. It was survival. The kind that doesn't come with medals. She nodded, eyes shimmering. I thought surviving meant never showing weakness. Not crying when I missed milestones. Not asking for help when the silence in the penthouse got too loud. But maybe real strength is letting yourself be seen. Jack looked at her. Not the billionaire. Not the boardroom general. Just a mother trying. And suddenly he saw in her the same resolve he saw in combat medics, those who ran toward chaos, not away from it even when their hands shook. Clara, He said you've been standing alone so long you don't realize you're allowed to lean. Her breath caught, but she didn't look away. And if I do, I won't let you fall. As the sky darkened, they walked the gravel path toward the backyard. Wind rustled through the trees. Fireflies blinked between branches. It felt untouched by the world, like a place suspended in time. Clara slowed her steps. Do you ever regret leaving it all behind? Jack shrugged. I didn't leave it. It left me. Military ends. Family passes. Life moves. The only thing you get to keep is who you choose to become after it all. She stopped walking, facing him. And who are you now? Looked at her eyes steady. Someone learning how to live with open hands instead of clenched fists. They stood in silence. Not awkward, not uncertain. Just present. Until Leo called out from the porch. Mom, Emma says we can stay for chili. Clara smiled, heart softening. I guess we're staying for chili, Jack chuckled. Hope you're not allergic to cayenne. She raised an eyebrow. How spicy, marine grade. She laughed. I'll take my chances. Later that night, as the kids sat in the living room watching cartoons, Clara and Jack stood at the sink, side by side, rinsing dishes. Her hand brushed his once. Just once. But it lingered a moment longer than necessary. Jack looked at her, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was standing on the outside of someone else's life. He felt seen. And Clara, for the first time in even longer, felt safe. Not because of a security system, not because of money, but because there was a man beside her who didn't want anything from her, except truth. And maybe one day, her trust. The headlines changed tone overnight. From Marine veteran saves disabled boy from Bullies to school incident. Sparks parental outrage. Did the hero cross the line? It started with a single blog post, an anonymous parent accusing Jack Turner of using military intimidation tactics on their child. Then came a video snippet cropped and twisted, showing one of the red jackets stumbling backward without context. From there, the online fire spread like dry brush in a canyon wind. By morning, Clara's inbox was drowning in polite panic. Subject: re-clarification requested regarding Mr. Turner's conduct. Subject: potential brand risks associated with recent headlines. Subject: urgent. Parent committee requests. Official statement. She hadn't even had her coffee yet. At school, Leo felt it first. The shift in tone, the sideways glances, the whispers he couldn't hear, but knew were about him. One of the parents had pulled their child from his class. Another child, usually friendly, refused to sit near him during art. And when Leo wheeled himself into the hallway alone, a folded note was waiting in his locker. Your hero dad should be in jail. His fingers trembled as he held the paper. For a moment he thought about showing a teacher. But he didn't. He just folded it smaller into a square no bigger than a thumbnail and slipped it into his pocket. That same afternoon, Jack stood outside the school gates, hands in the pockets of his olive work jacket. He'd come to pick up Emma, but Leo spotted him first. The boy hesitated, then rolled forward slowly. Hey, Jack. Jack smiled. Hey, champ. How was your day? Leo paused, eyes darting toward the other parents. Then quietly, can I wait with you until my mom gets here? Jack nodded and stepped aside so Leo could pull up next to him. A few moments later, Emma came running out waving a piece of construction paper. I made a robot, she beamed. Its name is Macaroni. Jack laughed, inspecting the googly-eyed abomination. That's top-tier engineering. Just then, a silver Lexus pulled up. Clara stepped out. But the moment she did, a woman from the PTA, flanked by two other well-groomed mothers, intercepted her. I hope you're aware of the concerns being raised, the woman said loudly enough for others to hear. About the role model you've introduced to our school community. Clara didn't flinch. If by role model you mean a man who stopped your son from tormenting mine, then yes, I'm fully aware. The woman's eyes narrowed. Some of us are considering legal options. This could escalate. Then escalate it, Clara said, stepping past her without another word. She reached Jack, her face calm but tight. Sorry you had to hear that, she muttered. Jack didn't move. It's not the first time someone wanted to call the law on me for standing still. Leo looked up at his mother. Mom, I got a note today. In my locker. Clara's heart froze. What kind of note? He hesitated, then handed her the crumpled square. She read it, face hardening. Jack reached for it, read it silently, and folded it back without a word. Clara looked at him. You okay? Jack's jaw clenched. I've been through worse, but no kid should have to carry this. She turned to him fully. Then let's stop letting him carry it alone. That night, Clara held an emergency meeting in her penthouse, just her PR chief legal advisor and head of school communications. This ends now, she said, pacing the room. We're not letting them reframe the narrative. The PR chief, a former journalist with keen instincts, nodded. The public is with you. The viral hashtags still trend positively. But the power parents at Whitestone are loud and connected. I don't care, Clara snapped. Leo is not going to grow up learning that bullies win just because their families donate more. The legal advisor hesitated. You're risking board confidence, Clara. They want you quiet. You're poking the hive. Clara folded her arms. Then maybe the hive needs to burn. Her voice was sharp, fierce, but her heart was racing. She wasn't just fighting for her company now. She was fighting for Leo, and for the man who reminded her what courage really looked like. Meanwhile, Jack sat on his back porch, Emma curled beside him under a flannel blanket. The stars blinked above the trees. The air smelled like pine needles and damp earth. Dad, Emma asked, why are people mad at you for helping? Jack exhaled slowly. Because sometimes people don't want their own kids to be the ones in the wrong. So they look for someone else to blame. That's not fair. No, he said. It's not. Emma thought for a long moment. If they say bad things about you, does that mean they'll say bad things about me? Jack wrapped his arm around her. Let them try. We know who we are, and we don't live our lives by their headlines. She nodded solemnly. You're my headline, he chuckled. That's not how headlines work. Yes, it is, she said, yawning. If I wrote a newspaper, the front page would say, Best Dad Ever Stops. Bullies with his calm face and awesome boots. Jack kissed her head. That's the only headline I'll ever need. The next morning, Jack received an envelope taped to the front door of his garage. No return address. Inside was a letter. Typed. Cold. You should think twice before showing up at that school again. Not everyone thinks you're a hero. Some of us see through the uniform. You're not welcome here. Take your daughter and leave quietly before it gets harder. Jack stared at it for a long time. Then he folded it neatly, placed it in a drawer, and went back to work on the old Harley engine humming in the corner, because fear only grows in silence. And Jack Turner had stopped being silent a long time ago. The auditorium of Whitestone Academy had never been this full. Parents packed the rows, designer bags tucked beneath their chairs, murmured judgments, passing like static between manicured fingers. The walls echoed with tension, with entitlement, with something colder, fear of losing control. At the front sat the school board, a polished panel of administrators and donors flanked by legal advisors and public relations staff. They weren't here to listen. They were here to contain. Jack Turner stood in the back of the room, arms folded, eyes calm. He wore his usual olive jacket jeans and work boots, not out of stubbornness, but because that was who he was. He wouldn't change to make anyone more comfortable. Clara Whitmore hadn't arrived yet, but the whispers had. Why would someone like her, align with someone like him. She's risking everything for a janitor with a temper. Poor Leo, he's being used for sympathy. Jack heard it all. And still, he didn't move. He spotted Leo sitting in the third row beside Emma, their feet not quite touching the floor, nervously swinging beneath their chairs. Leo kept glancing over his shoulder, searching the crowd. Jack caught his eye and gave him a subtle nod. "I'm here." That's all the boy needed. A hush fell over the room as the door opened. Clara stepped in, not in designer armor, but in a simple black dress, pearl earrings, and a determined gaze that sliced through the murmurs like a scalpel. She didn't march. She arrived with the quiet force of someone who no longer needed approval. The head of the board, a gray-haired man named Walter Pennington, cleared his throat and tapped the microphone. "We appreciate everyone joining us for this special session regarding the events that have drawn media attention to our institution. This is an opportunity for concerned parents and school representatives to engage in civil discourse." It went on. Words like reputational risk, community expectations, and appropriate boundaries floated into the room like poisoned air. Then came the testimonials. A father from the donor circle stood up, lips tight, arms crossed. "My son came home bruised, not from a fight, but from the shame of being humiliated by a grown man in front of his peers." That kind of trauma doesn't fade. A mother followed. "We're not defending bullying, but we are defending the right of our children not to be physically manhandled by someone who isn't faculty." Jack remained still. Not a twitch, not a glance away. He wasn't here to defend himself. He was here for them, and Clara knew it. She stood. Uninvited. The board hesitated. Then Walter sighed, gesturing toward the mic. "Ms. Whitmore, you may speak." Clara stepped up, fingers resting gently on the wood. "My son Leo was born with a spinal condition. He can't run on playgrounds. He can't walk down crowded hallways without risk. And for a long time, he couldn't smile without effort." She paused. The room quieted. "Last week, 4 older boys cornered him in your school hallway. They mocked him. They blocked his way. They took something from him that he needed, not a toy, but a tool." She looked directly at the parents who had spoken. "And your sons thought it was funny." Gasps, a shuffle of discomfort. Clara went on. Jack Turner, Marine veteran father neighbor, stepped in. Not with fists, not with fury, but with clarity. He de-escalated the situation. He didn't strike. He didn't shout. He simply stood. She scanned the crowd, pausing just long enough to let the silence grow tense. And somehow, that has become the threat. A few people stirred in their seats. Clara pressed forward. "If you're afraid your children were humiliated, perhaps you should ask yourself why." Perhaps they saw for the first time what real courage looks like. And it didn't come from a quarterback or a checkbook. It came from a man who knows what it means to stand between danger and a child. The room froze. Then quietly, a voice rose from the center of the crowd. A girl, 8th grade, glasses, ponytail, stood. "I saw the whole thing," she said, voice shaking but steady. "Mr. Turner didn't hurt anyone. He barely touched them. They just didn't know how to handle someone who didn't flinch." Walter raised a brow. "Your name, Miss Rachel Liang," she replied. "I filmed part of it. The real part." She pulled out her phone and with Clara's nod walked to the projector. The video played in silence. Jack's posture, the fluid sidestep, the calm, measured tone, the way he gently placed the cushion back on Leo's lap. Not a word needed to be said. When the lights came back on, the air had changed. Not cleared. Not entirely. But shifted. Walter cleared his throat. "Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Liang." Clara returned to the mic one final time. "We cannot teach our children empathy while punishing those who show it. We cannot raise leaders by modeling cowardice in the face of decency. If this school chooses to reprimand Jack Turner, then it is not a school I can continue to support or fund." The room held its breath. She turned, walked back to her seat, and gently placed a hand on Leo's shoulder. He looked up at her. She nodded once. "You're safe." Outside, as the crowd dispersed under the falling dusk, Jack stood beside his truck, arms crossed as usual. Clara approached her heels, crunching softly on the gravel. "You didn't have to come," he said. "Yes, I did." They stood for a moment watching Leo and Emma laugh about something that had nothing to do with grown-up politics or fear. "You were brave," Jack said. Clara looked at him. "No," she replied. "We were." He didn't argue. He just nodded. And when she reached out, just briefly, and touched his hand, he didn't pull away. For once, they were no longer holding the weight of the world alone. The Whitmore estate sat on 6 acres of curated silence. High hedges surrounded it. Like walls, manicured trees lined the driveway, like obedient guards, and floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of a world most people only saw in magazines. But tonight, Clara Whitmore didn't want luxury. She wanted peace. She wanted honesty. She wanted Jack Turner and his daughter to feel like they belonged not as guests, but as equals. The dining room with its glass chandelier and 12-foot mahogany table had been deemed too formal by Leo. So they gathered instead in the solarium off the kitchen, a warm, sunlit space where ivy climbed the windows and vintage string lights cast a soft golden glow. Dinner was simple: roast chicken, buttered carrots, garlic mashed potatoes. Clara had ordered it from her chef, but insisted on plating it herself. It mattered more that it felt personal than that it impressed. Jack arrived on time. Emma held his hand, wearing a jean jacket over her favorite dress, her braids freshly tied with yellow ribbons. Jack wore a clean collared shirt, sleeves rolled to the forearms, and the same worn boots he always wore, as if to say, "I came as I am." Clara greeted them at the door, barefoot apron still tied over her blouse, a smudge of flour on her wrist. She looked human. Leo wheeled up beside her and grinned. "Dad warned me not to let you near the pepper grinder again." "Because it exploded last time," Clara replied with mock horror. "Your father acts like I committed treason against the kitchen." Jack chuckled. "All I said was I don't like surprise attacks from seasoning." Emma looked at Leo. "My dad puts hot sauce on everything. He calls it character development." Leo laughed. "He tried to sneak it into my lemonade once." Jack raised a hand in defense. "That was one time, and it was an accident." They all laughed too loudly too long, and for a moment it felt like a real family dinner, the kind built not on blood, but on connection. As the kids retreated to the adjacent room with board games and beanbags, Clara poured 2 glasses of wine and joined Jack at the small table, now cleared of dishes. The silence between them was easy, not awkward, just present. So Clara said softly, tracing the rim of her glass, "Do you always inspire courtroom-worthy speeches wherever you go?" Jack smirked. "Only on Tuesdays." She laughed, then leaned back. "You know I never used to leave work before 8 p.m. I thought time with Leo would come later, after the IPOs, the acquisitions, the legacy I was supposed to build." Jack nodded, and now Clara's smile faded, but gently. "Now I just want my son to feel seen, and safe, and not lonely." Jack looked at her for a long time, then said quietly, "That's not something money can buy." "No," she whispered. "It isn't." A pause. Then Clara turned toward him, her voice softer. "What about you? What did you think life would look like after the Marines?" Jack stared into the wine glass for a moment, then set it down. "I thought I'd come home to a country that understood what it asked of me. that maybe I'd get a clean slate. Instead, I got 2 jobs, VA paperwork that never stopped, and a toddler who cried herself to sleep asking for her mother. Clara's eyes shimmered, but Jack continued. I also got Emma. I got days like this. I got second chances I didn't know I needed. She looked down almost shyly. You're a better man than I gave you credit for that first day. You mean when you saw me in the hallway and thought I was just a janitor? No, she said, smiling. I thought you were dangerous. Jack raised an eyebrow. And now? She held his gaze. Now I think you're the safest place I've ever stood next to. The moment hung there, delicate, honest, not charged with flirtation but something deeper, a recognition. 2 lives shaped by loss, 2 parents exhausted from holding up the world, 2 hearts that had quietly, unexpectedly begun to beat in rhythm. In the next room, Emma and Leo played a lopsided game of Scrabble. Zaptoid is not a word, Leo said, laughing. It will be one day, Emma insisted, when we live on Mars. Okay, Mars rules. Leo agreed. They high-fived with an exaggerated slap, then sat back, watching the stars begin to appear through the glass ceiling above. Your dad's funny, Leo said. Emma nodded. He's also sad sometimes. Leo tilted his head. You can tell. Yeah, she said quietly. But he hides it with jokes. He used to cry at night when he thought I was asleep. Leo didn't say anything, but then he reached over and touched her hand. My mom does that too. And in that moment, beneath the stars, between the words, they understood each other in ways adults sometimes forget how to. Later, as the dishes were done, and the kids reluctantly called truce on their Martian vocabulary, Jack walked Clara out onto the back veranda. The moon hung low over the hedges. A soft breeze stirred the ivy along the stone columns. They stood close, but not touching. Not yet. Tonight was good, Jack said. Clara nodded. It was. Then, almost without thinking, she asked, Do you ever worry this is too different? Jack turned to her. Different from what? From what's expected. From where we come from. From the rules people like us are supposed to follow. He considered it, then said quietly, Maybe different is what we both needed. She didn't answer. She just stepped a little closer, shoulder brushing his. And for the first time, Jack didn't pull back. He let the silence hold them. He let the stillness say what words weren't ready to. And as he looked at Clara, the woman with fire in her voice and fear in her heart, he realized something he hadn't let himself admit. Until now, he wanted to know what it would feel like, to be loved by someone who saw the scars and stayed anyway. The news vans came first. 3 of them parked across from the Whitmore estate just after sunrise, silent sentinels with telescopic lenses and humming generators. They didn't knock. They didn't call. They waited like vultures scenting scandal. Clara watched from behind her living room curtains, coffee cooling in her hand. It was the 5th day in a row she'd been on the front page of the financial section, not for a merger, not for a product launch, but for him. Billionaire CEO linked to Marine who faced school complaint. Romance or recklessness, Whitmore's risky defense of working-class hero. Mother or mogul, can Clara Whitmore still lead a Fortune 500 company? Every headline sliced deeper than the last. She'd handled boardroom takedowns, hostile acquisitions, political donors. But this was different. Because for the first time, it wasn't just about her. It was about them. Leo, Jack, Emma, the fragile forming thing that had bloomed in her solarium under the glow of string lights and soft laughter. And now it was being dissected. Publicly. Cruelly. Unfairly. Across town, Jack's garage was quieter than usual. He kept the doors down, the sign flipped to closed for repairs, even though nothing was broken, at least not on the vehicles. But something inside him was cracking. The letter on his workbench sat unfolded an editorial printed from the local paper. Is Jack Turner more dangerous than we think? A grainy photo of him taken mid-stride, mouth open, hand raised, as he guided Leo's chair had been framed to make him look aggressive. They didn't care about context. They cared about clicks. Emma padded into the garage, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Are we going to the library today?" she asked. Jack hesitated. He was supposed to read to a group of third graders as part of a veteran-led mentorship program. But he already knew what would happen. Cameras, whispers, some parent complaining to the principal, another article titled, "Veteran with History of Incidents. Reads to Children." "I don't know, Bug," he said, kneeling. "Might be better to lay low today." Emma frowned. "Because of what people are saying," Jack nodded slowly. Her brow furrowed. "But that's not you. You're not what they're saying." "I know," he said. "But sometimes people listen louder to noise than to truth." She was quiet for a long moment, then softly asked, "Are we going to stop seeing Leo and Ms. Clara?" Jack didn't answer right away, because he wasn't sure. Not because he wanted to walk away, but because he wasn't sure he belonged. Clara's day spiraled. A morning call with her PR team turned into a defensive scramble. The VP of marketing gently suggested postponing the next product reveal. The board requested a casual, friendly lunch to realign optics. And then came the message from HarperCollins, a children's publishing firm they were negotiating with, for a co-branded literacy campaign. "Given current controversy, we've decided to pause partnership discussions until further notice." She stared at the screen fingers, still hovering over the mouse. It had taken 6 months to build that deal, and now it was gone. Not because she had failed as a CEO, but because she had stood beside a man who fixed engines, not empires. And still, she didn't regret it. Not a second of it. What she did regret was not preparing herself for how lonely this part of the road would be. That evening, Jack knocked on Clara's door. He looked tired. Not physically, but in the eyes. That kind of exhaustion only carried by people trying to do the right thing while the world threw stones. Clara led him to the solarium, the same place they'd shared dinner days earlier. But tonight, there were no string lights, no warmth, just silence. Jack didn't sit. Neither did she. "I'm sorry," she said first. He shook his head. "I'm the one who should be." "No," she replied. "You did nothing wrong. The world's just loud right now. And cruel." Jack exhaled. "I thought I could handle it. The looks, the pressure, the noise. But Emma asked me today if we were going to stop seeing you." Clara's throat tightened. "And what did you say? I didn't know what to say." She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I lost a publishing deal today." He looked up surprised. "They said I was too controversial, that my personal choices might reflect poorly on their brand." She gave a hollow laugh, as if kindness is a liability now. Jack stepped closer, but carefully. "Clara, I never wanted to hurt your life. You've worked too hard. You've built too much." "I've built a lot," she said. "But not the right things." A pause. Then, "Not until now." He studied her face, the cracks in the armor, the vulnerability she didn't show the press or the board or even her own reflection. Just him. "I don't want to walk away from this," Clara said. "From you. From what we're building." Jack's jaw tightened. But I need to know we can survive this storm." He looked down, voice low. "I've survived worse." She reached out, fingers brushing his. "Then let's survive it together." That night, Clara didn't send a press release. She didn't issue a denial. She didn't retreat. She tucked Leo into bed, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "You're the best thing I've ever fought for." Then she walked out to her veranda, phone in hand. She opened Twitter, typed slowly, "I will never apologize for standing beside someone who stood up for my son." Stand strong, she hit post, and waited, but not with fear, with clarity. Let the world scream. She'd already found what mattered in the silence between. The morning after Clara's post, the world didn't end. The markets didn't crash. Her company didn't fall apart. The sun still climbed over Manhattan's skyline like it always had. Defiant, golden, indifferent to rumor. But something had shifted. In her, and in others. Her post 30 words and a hashtag lit up social media like dry tinder. Stand Strong trended again. Only this time, it wasn't rage-fueled. It was reclaimed. Stories poured in: a father who stood up to school bullies, a veteran who mentored kids in a rough neighborhood, a single mother who defended a disabled student against biased faculty. The tide began to turn, not just for Jack, but for something larger. For principle. Clara sat in her office, surrounded by screens. Emails pinged. Interview requests flowed in. A national news anchor left a voicemail offering a live sit-down. But Clara didn't reply. She had a different statement in mind. That afternoon, she walked into the boardroom wearing white. No legal team, no media coach, no apology. The board members, caught somewhere between admiration and anxiety, shifted in their seats. Richard Halloway cleared his throat. "Clara, we appreciate your passion, but the brand..." "The brand," Clara interrupted, "is integrity." Silence. She clicked the remote in her hand. The screen lit up with a logo. A navy blue circle encasing a silhouette of a child in a wheelchair beside an upright adult holding a hand. Stand Strong Foundation. The room blinked. "I'm launching it with $10 million of my own capital," Clara said. "It will provide direct grants to families of disabled children and fund anti-bullying programs across private and public schools." A murmur swept through the room. And yes, she added, voice calm, but resolute. "Jack Turner will be the first recipient of the Stand Strong Civic Honor, a public recognition for the courage to act when others freeze." Richard leaned forward. "You're making this man a symbol. I'm honoring a man who risked everything to protect a child who wasn't his own. That is the symbol." Another board member cleared her throat. "There will be consequences." Clara smiled. "Yes, the right kind." She picked up her bag and walked out. Because some meetings are not for debate, they're for declaration. Jack didn't see it coming. He'd just finished an oil change for Mrs. Laramie's rusted Camry when his phone lit up with texts. "Turn on the news. Clara just said your name on live TV. Dude, you're a national hero now." He frowned, wiping grease from his hands as he opened the link someone had sent. There she was, standing at a podium in front of a blue backdrop, hair pulled back, face calm. Not as CEO, not as billionaire, but as mother and partner in truth. "This is Jack Turner," she said. "He's not famous. He's not rich. He's not on a board or a ballot. But he showed my son what strength looks like, not by fighting, but by standing still, by choosing calm over conflict, dignity over domination. If that makes headlines, then maybe we've forgotten what heroism really means." Jack stared at the screen, jaw tight. He wasn't used to being named or celebrated. He didn't like it. Not really. But something inside him, something long dormant, softened. For so long he'd believed silence was his armor, that shadows were safer than spotlights. But maybe standing in the light wasn't the same as showing off. Maybe it meant showing up. That evening, Clara pulled up to Jack's garage just as the sun dipped low behind the trees. He was waiting, hands in his pockets, a faint smile on his face. "You're relentless," he said as she stepped out. "I prefer strategic. You put my name on national television. I thought about asking you first. But you didn't." "No," she said, "because I knew you'd say no." He studied her, half amused, half exasperated. "You know I don't want fame." "This wasn't about fame," Clara said gently. "It was about truth, and owning the narrative before someone else rewrites it." He looked away toward the field behind the garage, where Emma and Leo were setting up a blanket under a string of makeshift lanterns. "You know I'm not a symbol, right?" he said. "You're right," she replied. "You're something better." He glanced back at her. "You're real." They joined the kids just as the fireflies began to flicker. Emma passed out peanut butter sandwiches, Leo handed out juice boxes, and the four of them lay back on the grass like they'd done it 100 times before. No cameras, no press, just stars above and a future still unwritten. Jack reached for a flashlight and began pointing at constellations. "That one's Cassiopeia," he said. Emma yawned. "What's she famous for?" Jack chuckled. "Being stubborn. She thought she was the most beautiful woman alive, and the gods punished her by turning her into a star." Clara smiled. "So the lesson is never believe your own press," Jack grinned. "Something like that." They lay there, the silence thick but gentle. Then Clara whispered, "Thank you for letting me stand beside you." Jack turned her face, faintly lit by starlight. "Thank you," he said, "for not backing away when the light got harsh." Their eyes met. Not as allies, not as survivors, but as two people who had chosen finally not to walk alone. The lake was still, smooth as glass, quiet as breath, held between strangers who were almost something more. Jack pulled the rowboat up to the dock, offering his hand, as Clara stepped down carefully onto the wooden planks. The evening sun burned low on the horizon, turning the water. Gold the trees, 1,000 shades of fire. "This place is beautiful," Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack simply nodded. "Not many people come out here." "Which is why I do." He tied the rope around the post, then reached into the boat and retrieved a worn canvas blanket and a small metal thermos. Hot cider. From the orchard a few miles north. Figured it beats small talk and cold wine. Clara smiled. "You're not great at small talk, are you?" "No," he said, settling beside her on the bench overlooking the water. "But I'm trying." They sat for a while watching the last light fade. The silence between them wasn't awkward now. It was something else. Trust. Hard-earned. Shared. Jack poured them both cider, the steam curling between them like soft punctuation. "Did you bring Emma here when she was little?" Clara asked. Jack nodded. "When she turned 4, I rowed us out to the middle and told her it was the center of the universe." Clara smiled. "Did she believe you?" "She still does," he said. "And maybe she's not wrong." Clara looked at him, his weathered hands, his steady eyes the faint shadow of a healing man who never asked to be seen. "Do you ever miss the past?" she asked quietly. Jack stared out over the water. "I miss pieces of it," he said. "But not the whole thing." He took a breath, then added, "I miss holding my wife's hand during storms. I miss the way she'd hum when she folded laundry. Stupid, ordinary things." Clara turned to face him fully. "What happened to her?" He hesitated, not because he didn't want to tell her, but because telling it made it real again. "She was a nurse," he said slowly. "Went back to work between deployments. One day, a drunk driver blew through an intersection. She was walking home. It was instant." Clara swallowed hard. "I'm so sorry." Jack nodded, the kind of nod that says, "I've heard that before, but thank you for saying it anyway." "And you?" he asked gently. "Do you miss your past?" Clara let out a quiet breath. "I miss the version of me that existed before grief turned into armor," she said. "Leo's father died on a business flight. The plane went down an hour after takeoff. I got the call while I was in the middle of pitching a new product line." She looked down at her hands. "I remember finishing the meeting. I didn't even cry until the next morning." Jack didn't interrupt. I kept telling myself I'd grieve when I had time, after the lawyers, after the funeral, after the next quarterly earnings call. She met his gaze, eyes glassy. But grief doesn't wait. It just gets heavier. Jack reached out, then not with a dramatic gesture, but a quiet one. His hand found hers on the bench between them. Warm, calloused, strong. And she didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into it. They sat like that, hand in hand, staring out at the lake as dusk gave way to a violet night. Fireflies blinked around them like slow, thoughtful applause. "I think I stopped believing in good men for a while," Clara said. Jack squeezed her hand gently. "I stopped believing I'd ever be seen as one." She turned to him, voice soft. "You never stopped being one. The world just got too loud to notice." They sat in silence again, but now it was full. Of memories, of longing, of something slowly breaking open. "I want this," Clara said quietly. "Not the spotlight, not the press, just this." Jack's eyes searched hers. "Even if the world doesn't make room for it, I'll carve out space myself." And then finally, delicately, Jack reached up and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Can I ask something selfish?" he said. "Anything. What does it feel like to fall for someone when you've taught yourself not to?" Clara didn't smile. She didn't laugh. She simply whispered, "It feels like this." And then she leaned forward, her forehead resting gently against his. Not a kiss. Not yet. But something quieter. Deeper. A promise without pressure. A beginning wrapped in stillness. Later, they rowed back under starlight. Jack didn't speak. He just listened to the oars dipping into the water, the creak of wood, the steady rhythm of something that no longer needed to be rushed. Clara sat across from him, wrapped in his canvas blanket, eyes never leaving his. And in the middle of that lake, they both realized something profound. The past may shape you, but love, real love, asks only for your presence. The sky over Whitestone Academy was brushed in soft gold, the kind of dawn that made you believe the world still had good stories to tell. Rows of white folding chairs had been arranged neatly on the school lawn, facing a makeshift stage, decorated with sunflowers and red, white, blue streamers, Leo's favorite colors, and Emma's idea. A banner stretched across the front rail in bold, hand-painted letters, "Stand strong, a celebration of courage and kindness." It had started as a school assembly. Then parents joined in. Then the school board endorsed it. Then the town wanted in. Now half the community was here. Teachers, students, veterans, mechanics, lawyers, grandmothers with walkers, teenagers with signs. Clara's entire corporate staff had shown up, many wearing t-shirts that said, "Dignity over domination." Jack stood behind the stage, adjusting the collar of a clean button-down shirt Emma had picked out. He still wasn't used to crowds, wasn't used to being seen. But today wasn't about him. It was about what he stood for. Next to him, Clara looked radiant. Not billionaire radiant, but alive in the heart radiant. A flowing navy dress. No jewelry. Just her boy, and her choice to show up not as a CEO, but as a mother, as a partner, as someone who had chosen light and refused to let go. The crowd quieted as the principal stepped up to the podium. "We gather today not to celebrate victory," he said, "but to celebrate values. Courage, kindness, and the quiet strength it takes to stand when others run." He turned, slightly smiling, toward the front row. "And now, we invite a very special student to the stage." A few chairs creaked as Leo rolled forward, his wheels clicking gently on the ramp. Jack felt a knot in his throat as the boy adjusted the microphone, then looked up, scanning the sea of faces until his eyes landed on his mom. Then on him. Leo's voice came small at first, then steadier. "Most people think heroes wear capes, or have powers, or medals. But I think heroes are people who just don't walk away." The crowd stilled, like when you're scared and someone steps in, or when you fall and someone helps you up without making you feel small? He glanced down, then back up. Mr. Jack Turner didn't fight anyone that day, but he fought for me. Without fists, just with his heart. Murmurs of emotion rippled through the audience. Leo continued, and because of him, I remembered something my mom told me when I was little, before the surgeries. She said, "Brave isn't loud. Brave is when you protect something even if your voice shakes." He paused. The wind caught the edge of the banner behind him. I was scared of the hallway. Now I'm not, because someone stood beside me. Leo turned to Jack, holding out a small envelope. "Thank you for helping me stand without standing." Jack stepped forward slowly, eyes misting, and accepted the envelope with both hands. Inside was a drawing. 2 stick figures, one tall one in a wheelchair under a bold red heart. Beneath it, Leo had written, "Real strength is quiet." The applause rose before anyone could speak again. Loud, heartfelt, pure. Not the applause of spectacle, but of community, of recognition. Later, as the crowd mingled and children played under the trees, Clara and Jack walked together near the edge of the field, where a small wooden bridge crossed a quiet creek. "I thought you might disappear after this," Clara said, brushing a leaf from his sleeve. Jack smirked. "You've known me long enough to know I don't run." She looked at him, smile soft. "No, you stand still. And somehow, the world learns to breathe again." He paused at the center of the bridge, watching Emma and Leo toss pebbles downstream. "You changed things, Clara." She tilted her head. "How so? You could have stayed safe. You could have played the part the world expected." "I tried," she admitted. "But it cost too much." Jack turned to her, eyes steady. "So what now?" Clara reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small silver key. He looked at it confused. "It's not a house," she said quickly, "or a car. It's a writing room." Leo's therapist said storytelling helps him process things, and he asked if I could build him a place of his own. But I want Emma to have a key, too. It's theirs. Jack took the key gently. "This isn't just for them, is it?" Clara looked up, eyes shining. "It's for all of us." They stood there as the creek whispered beneath their feet, as children's laughter floated behind them, and as the sky opened wide with possibility. Then softly, finally, Jack reached out and touched her cheek. "You're not alone anymore," he said. Clara's breath caught. "Neither are you," she whispered. And in that golden moment, with leaves falling like slow blessings and healing pulsing just beneath the surface, they leaned into each other. Not for rescue, not for escape, but for presence, for love, for a future no longer defined by fear, but by choice, by light. Epilogue. 1 year later, the Stand Strong Foundation had funded programs in 12 schools across the state. Leo had written and illustrated his first short story book, The Boy in the Chair Who Fought Like a Lion. Emma had started a kindness club at school, modeled after her dad's example. Clara and Jack, well, they weren't flashy. They weren't loud. But every Friday night after homework and dishes and bedtime stories, they'd dance in the living room to old vinyl records, while 2 kids giggled from the couch. And sometimes that was enough to change the world. One quiet, strong moment at a time. Before you go, we'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? It's always amazing to see how far kindness can travel. If this story touched your heart, consider subscribing to our channel for more real, soulful moments. Like this, stories that remind us of what truly matters. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you for spending time with us today. We're honored to be part of your day. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and keep believing in the good.